What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dynasty Gambit. We got a special guest, Addi, here, and we're going to do our first mock draft of the 2026 rookie season. So lock in. It should be a fun one. What's up, everybody? I'm excited to welcome in Addi here, who's from Duck League Champ. Obviously, that we've been talking a lot on our social media about his rankings app, which we've all been really enjoying. And I'm happy to have him here for our mock draft. And Addi, you want to introduce yourself to the people? I know probably a lot of people know who you are, but yeah.
I feel so bad for them. Hey, it's awesome to be here. I'm Addi. I am the creator and founder of League Champ, one of the co-hosts of Two Guys, One Pod, and I am actually here with one of our most accurate rankers, the winner of our conference round, Austin Jacobson. So could not be happier to be here. Be sure to check out the League Champ app. You can find all my stuff there, and excited to get some mock drafting. I just came back from the Senior Bowl, so got some takes. Not too many of the players on our draft board necessarily. Not too many first or second rounders, but I have a feeling we'll be talking about one or two. I won't give any spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Excited to see some of that firsthand insight from being down there and getting to see some of those guys. We decided we're going to use a mock because it's just so much easier to do it with landing spots. So we're going to use a recent mock draft, and I'll show you here. We got this is from a New York Times Athletic mock draft. They had Mendoza going number 1 overall to the Raiders, which is what we all expect, and then some interesting landing spots from there. We are tweaking one thing. They had Houston taking 2 running backs in the second round, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So we're just gonna have Washington trading up at the end of the second and drafting Jonah Coleman. So it's the only change we're making. But other than that, we're following their mock draft from January 29th. And we're just gonna alternate back and forth, a 2-round mock, getting into based on these landing spots, how will this affect the board compared to ADP? It'll be interesting to see. And so we're going to start off. I'm going to have the first pick. Addi will have the second pick, and we'll alternate back and forth for 24 picks total, 2 rounds, and see where we end up.
Heck yeah.
All right. So let me go ahead and see if I can. I guess I'll go ahead and start it. All right. So I think first pick is pretty conventional wisdom. I would like to see Jeremiah Love go, to the Chiefs or something like that. But in this mock, they have him going 18th to Minnesota. I don't think that's a terrible landing spot. I don't foresee much happening that could change him from the 101. I don't really see, I guess maybe, God forbid, some sort of an injury between now and the time of rookie drafts. This would be the only reason I think he would not be 101. He's going to go in the first round of the NFL draft and be in a great spot regardless. We can kind of compare landing spots where we would not so much prefer, but I think either way, he's going to end up 101 in most drafts. What do you think about this Minnesota landing spot here?
I actually love the Minnesota landing spot. We've seen Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones really thrive there, and Aaron Jones is at the end of his leash. We've seen him slowly declining over the past couple of years. So if they manage to get Jeremiah Love at that spot, I think they'll be thrilled by it. It's not like they're holding on to Jordan Mason long term, and we've seen 2 backs be productive in that backfield. To be honest, with JJ McCarthy, the one thing we can be confident in is they're going to run the ball.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and we'll see. I mean, the jury's still out on how the JJ McCarthy experience will go down, but I would say it definitely was less than what they were hoping for in year 1. And I think he's going to get another chance, and he may be better than what he's shown. But I definitely think that they're going to have to be leaning on running the ball, and that bodes well for Love here. All right. So, Addi, who are you taking 102? This is kind of where the drama starts. I feel like Love is pretty much a consensus 101, but there's a bunch of receivers and a quarterback that'll probably go in these next 2 picks, and kind of the order is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I think this is a game theory question for me. Like, I would love to take a receiver in a good landing spot. Honestly, Tate or Denzel Boston as the wide receiver one seem like the safest pick. But if I'm in a super flex dynasty draft, I'm getting quarterback. I want to shore up that roster spot. Quarterback is just a scarce position. So if you can get value, get that value. We have Fernando Mendoza comp to Daniel Jones in our modeling, and I gotta say that's a pretty nice landing spot. Like I would love to see him in the Raiders uniform long term. He's gonna have some mobility. They'll be able to build an offense around him. It'll be rough year one, but it's been rough year one with every 101 quarterback. Caleb Williams, Cam Ward, they all have their warts. They're gonna have rough weeks here or there, but that value is gonna go up over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think he's a pretty safe pick there. I think that with the other receiver landing spots, I think they're all decent, but none of them are like really stand out. Like this is clearly, the top guy. I think we could see some separation as we go through the process leading up to the draft where it's like, oh, this guy's the clear wide receiver one. I just don't think we really have that right now. And so at this point, I think Mendoza makes a lot of sense. It's a super flex. I didn't really mention the settings. I think we're going to go basically off of a standard 4-point passing touchdown, super flex league, let's say a 0.5 tight end premium. So nothing major, but a little bit of a bump for the tight ends.
Oh, now I need to change my pick. Just kidding.
But yeah, no, I think so. I think that makes sense. I think for me, I do have Mendoza number 2 on my board right now. I think that the way this all went down is really interesting. How they had Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson going in the top 5. I think that's kind of a little aggressive, maybe. I'm not sure we'll see 2 receivers go in the top 5, but it's considered a weaker class top to bottom. So we may see receivers go a little higher than we normally do, but we'll see. With this pick, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Jordan Tyson here. And the reason why is I think that this is a really good landing spot. He's getting top 5 capital. Now, he did go just behind Carnell Tate, but I think that you look at this, John Harbaugh's coming in. Jackson Dart looks to be the real deal. Malik Neighbors is there, but there's a lot of questions about his health going into next year. He may miss the beginning of the season depending on how severe. I mean, it seems like the news keeps getting worse and worse. He's still on crutches. There may have been more damage than we thought. It's hard to read into some of that stuff too much, but I don't see potentially, having a number 1 guy being a huge barrier to Tyson. Right? He'll probably be the 2 there long term with Neighbors. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. They're probably not going to bring Wandale back. We'll see. I mean, he's a free agent, but they don't have a ton of other passing game weapons there. And even if Neighbors does come back fully healthy, I think that if John Harbaugh can help Jackson Dart develop the way we think he can, then I think that there's a chance that they can easily support 2 very good wide receivers there. And we could see kind of an Emeka Egbuka-like start to his career where there's, injuries ahead of him and he's able to take the number 1 role right away, even if it isn't a permanent number 1 role, to jump in there and get some number 1 reps while Neighbors is recovering. So I don't really, to me, what matters more than the fact that it's the Giants is the fact that he goes 5th. The Giants have a lot of needs. If they're taking him with the number 5 pick, they have big plans for him. And so that's where I'm going here.
Yeah. Weird landing spot, in my opinion. I would be shocked to see the Giants actually go receiver at 5. I agree the news from Malik Neighbors has been pretty terrifying, but I would see them attacking that in the 2nd or 3rd round. This receiver class isn't the best one we've had in a couple of years, but it is flat. Like, there's a lot of talent down the board, so I'd be surprised there. But if he ends up on the Giants, I think the process makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary because we saw that Emeka arc, and
Right.
we've seen how a player can look really great when they're given the opportunity and then fall off the board. I'm going to go a bit off the board here just to throw stuff off and throw Denzel Boston in at team 4. I love that landing spot in Cleveland. Denzel Boston had some of the best comps in our database. Rashi Rice, Alec Pierce, Jaden Higgins, BTJ. When I see something like that, it's really an indicator that there is a lot of talent and that he can meet those expectations. Now, Washington's had great receivers in the past. We saw Rome Odunze come out of there, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. So I think Denzel Boston's going to be in that same mold of coming into the NFL, 6'3", 190. If he can put a little bit of muscle on, I think he could be a bona fide wide receiver one. And the opportunity in Cleveland screaming at him in the face. Like, as long as they can get even competent quarterback play, not even consistent, we're going to be pretty happy with that. And they still do have Shador and Deshaun Watson there. They could be looking at Arch Manning in a year. So I like the landing spot long term. And it's not like Jerry Judy's ever prevented someone else from getting targets.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's off consensus, but I like that. I mean, I think it makes sense. You're calling a shot on a wide receiver you like. I mean, I still think there's probably two other receivers I'd take ahead of Boston, but I do agree. A lot of people get scared off by the Browns landing spot, but I think that it doesn't necessarily bode poorly for them at all. They might go with Shador for another year, or they might bring in a veteran that's a short-term bet, or even try to do the Deshaun Watson thing again. I don't know. But either way, I don't think any of those guys are the long-term quarterback, and they're setting themselves up to probably be a very high pick in that 2027 class. And we all know that there's going to be a ton of options there. So I definitely think that, you don't need to be scared off by the landing spot. I do think I'd rather take Tate here just because, if he really does go top 5, I think that draft capital signals something that Tennessee really is going to be investing in that team. Brian Daboll coming in as the offensive coordinator. There's questions about Cam Ward, but I feel like as the season went on, he started to look better and better, and at least could be a serviceable quarterback that can support some fantasy receivers. And there's not really a clear alpha there. You have a couple of the rookies, like Eomener and then Chimdike. Both of them showed flashes, but there's nothing that really scares you as far as like these guys are going to take up targets and not allow you to be the number one. And Carnell Tate's a guy that really his whole career has not been the number one on his team. So even if he doesn't see number one like role, he could still produce really well. I mean, he had all kinds of guys, including Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith in front of him over the last couple of years. But I actually think that this potentially is a really good landing spot for him. Like I said before, if you end up with top 5 draft capital as a wide receiver, that means this team is invested in using you. And I liked a lot of what I saw from him last year. I think about the Texas game, he made that incredible touchdown catch. I think he just was overshadowed by Jeremiah Smith a little bit, but he was honestly very consistent. A huge part of the reason that team went undefeated in the regular season. And I like him a lot here, and I think that he could really shine in that Tennessee offense. I like the landing spot. I like the draft capital, and that's why I'm going to take him at this spot.
I like that move. I mean, Carnell Tate is a talented wide receiver. Personally, I have him at 3 in this class. I like Lemon, and I like what I've seen from Tyson a lot. Lemon's typically the type of wide receiver that I'm drawn to, a little bit faster, quicker twitch, but Carnell Tate's been consistent throughout his whole career. And when we're looking at this draft class, we have multiple guys that are playing in offenses where there is an established number one that they're working around. Carnell Tate's one of them. Jacoby Lane's another one. Malachi Lemon and Lane essentially shared that wide receiver 1 role, and Lemon just broke away this season to really take the lead on that. I like to see a guy that can establish that target share a bit more. That was kind of my trepidation with Lane going into the Senior Bowl, and Carnell Tate established that role early and often. So I don't hate the pick, and I love the landing spot. Arguably the best landing spot we got here. Malachi Lemon, I wanted to take him for the last 3 picks. And I think I have to here just because I'm such a huge fan of his talent. He comps to Malik Neighbors in my modeling. That's just the best compliment I can give to a guy. I think he is a bona fide wide receiver 1. The only trepidation I have about him is that LA Rams landing spot is scary because he could have a year behind Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And then he could be dealing with ambiguous quarterback situation. I think in a dream scenario, he would be in an established offense where he's getting those targets game after game. Sans Colts or the Titans or the Browns, where he actually is the established one and they have to build that offense around him. But if I'm looking at a consolation prize, playing with Sean McVay has got to be one for Malachi Lemon.
Yeah, so for me, Lemon is my wide receiver one. If we were doing this draft
we're amongst friends.
without landing spots, I would have taken him number 3. But to me, when I looked at the landing spots, I see 2 guys going in the top 5, and then I see Lemon going to a situation where, you don't want to overthink the landing spot. You want to draft talent over landing spot, but it looks like, going into next year, you're looking at a narrow window with Matthew Stafford, maybe another year or 2. And I don't foresee Puka and Devontae Adams going anywhere for the rest of the time. Stafford is their quarterback, so he's going to probably be the 3 in that offense. And I just think that would severely limit his upside. And then you're like, okay, well, once Adams retires, he could establish himself next to Puka, Sean McVay offense. But there's so many questions of like, what's next for the Rams after Matthew Stafford? Are they able to hit on quarterback? And so there's just a lot of unknowns with that landing spot, like you said, that made me take both Tyson and Tate over him. But that could be something that if I did that in a real draft, it would come back to bite me, because I do think that Malachi Lemon is the number 1 talent in this wide receiver class. But we're going with the landing spot method, and so I think it kind of made sense to kind of tweak things based on landing spot.
Who you lean here?
Let's see. I'm gonna go with it's
a scary spot.
It is.
I'm happy this ain't my pick.
I think I'm going to take, and this might be a little bit. I just think you have to, with it being super flex and with the landing spot being as high as it is, I'm going to take Ty Simpson. I'm not a huge fan of his. Going 16th to the Jets, you got to think he's going to get a chance to start. He's going to get a chance to play year 1. And I mean, when you're in a super flex league and you get a guy who's going to be one of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, he's getting really top half first round draft capital here. I think that, this is a pick they traded for. So I think if this actually happens, which I might be a little surprised if it does, but if this actually happens, I think that, playing in an offense with Garrett Wilson, if they bring back Breece Hall, and they have some, if Adonai Mitchell still there, John Mechie, there's some potential weapons there.
That's talent.
So yeah. So I think that there's some potential upside. And even though I'm not huge on Ty Simpson, I think it's a weak quarterback class, and teams know that. And so I think it will drive up the value of number 2 and 3 quarterbacks as far as like guys that would have gone maybe 3rd round if there were more established guys. If Dante Moore was in this class, if Arch Manning was in this class, maybe teams are still like, okay, well, this is the QB2. I want to take a shot on him. We'll give him a chance to start. If it doesn't work out, we'll pick at the top of the draft again next year. But I think that he'll get a chance to be at least like Tyler Shuck was in New Orleans. And, there's the upside of ending up as a top 20, top 15 dynasty quarterback going into next year. And with everyone else, there's so many big question marks that I think that's where I'd go there.
Yeah, he has my favorite weird stat from this QB class, actually. As I'm sure you know, I'm a big spreadsheet nerd. Like that's really where I make my money in fantasy football. And Ty Simpson has the best completion percentage among quarterbacks in this draft class between 20 and 30 yards down the field. So you might be thinking he's a great deep ball thrower. 30 plus yards down the field, he has the worst completion percentage in this class. Such a fun little dichotomy there that I really don't know how to evaluate him well. He's one of those quarterbacks where if he ended up in, say, an LA Rams uniform, like Malachi Lemon is in this mock, I would be thrilled. I would be like, well, this guy's the future of Matt Stafford. He's going to get in there. He's going to be a talented quarterback. He's going to work out. The Jets could ruin any good thing. They entirely broke Justin Fields if he wasn't already broken. They broke Zach Wilson. They've destroyed so many adequate QBs that I'm terrified to take anyone in a Jets uniform. I love the landing spot. I actually think Mason Taylor, Garrett Wilson, and Adonai Mitchell is just about the best group you could hope for having as like a young quarterback. But man, That scares the bejeebers out of me. Well, we haven't had a tight end come off the board here,
Yeah.
and I think I need to remedy that.
Okay.
Kenyon Sadiq,
Mm-hmm.
comps to Brendan Strange in my modeling. Don't think he's the best tight end prospect we've ever seen, but I like the landing spot. Tampa Bay, they throw the ball a lot. When you're looking at a tight end, you want them to be an auxiliary piece of that offense. Yeah, you'd love to have Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, but I think Brock Bowers and Trey McBride make their money because the team that they're on has such a dysfunction that they have to throw the ball to the tight end on a regular basis. On Tampa Bay, he's going to have tons of opportunities for touchdowns early on. Cade Otton is fine, but he isn't an undistinguishable or unpassable target on the tree. So I love that spot for Sadiq, and I think he can really thrive in that Tampa Bay offense.
Yeah, I like that pick. It was between Sadiq and Simpson for me at the last pick. And I think actually it's a pretty good landing spot. I think in Tampa, I mean, we saw Cade Otton, who's definitely the definition of kind of like just a guy tight end, put up some big stats in certain spots there. So I think that if you have a athletic guy like Sadiq in that offense, you could see him be a really solid tight end. And I think there's not really, I don't think that we have a Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland level prospect in this tight end class. But Sadiq does seem like he's going to be a first round pick. In this mock, he went, first half of the first round. So good landing spot, good draft capital. And I think especially tight end premium league, it makes a lot of sense there. I'm going to take Trinidad Shamblas here. And we don't know if he's for sure coming out. We obviously know he's suing for the right to get to play more in college. But in this mock, he went to, let's see, where did he go? He went to the Arizona Cardinals at the top of the second round. So basically a first round pick. I mean, you're talking about second or third pick of the second round. Cardinals, I expect them to probably move on from Kyler Murray. So he'll probably end up somewhere else this year. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is their long-term answer. So if you look at this, he's probably set up to be quarterback one in an offense with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., and ascending Michael Wilson. I think there's a lot to like here. You got the rushing upside with him. You've got, the ability to, he obviously has showed great leadership, was able to get Ole Miss right on the precipice of an improbable run to the championship game. He put them ahead, and his defense gave up a touchdown at the end of the game, but he put himself in a good position. All year long, he looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Really a great story. And I think that there's a lot to like about him compared to the other options in this class. I personally don't really understand why he wants to come back to college, because I think that he will be picked a lot higher this year than he would be next year. So
in the process, he could go above Ty Simpson. Like, I don't get that move at all.
It wouldn't shock me if he does end up coming out, if he ends up as a first round pick. But even if he's not a first round pick, I think this landing spot, early second, is a good spot for him. And I'll take a shot on a quarterback in a super flex league that's going to get a chance to start, that has a little bit of rushing upside. I think there's a lot pointing in his direction. If this is how it turns out, I think that he could be a good steal that could slip into the second in some of your drafts, kind of like Jackson Dart did last year. Another Ole Miss quarterback, and I think that you could see that play out really well. And I'm willing to take him here. Once you're getting past those first 5-6 picks, I think that it's kind of like, all right, who is the best upside shot? And I think if he's going top of the second, I'd like Shamblas there.
Yeah, the board gets real flat around here. I was interested to see the guys they had at those spots. Picking Eli Stowers, I love that KC landing spot, playing right behind Travis Kelce. We don't know if we even get another year of Kelce in here. So if he actually gets to be the tight end one early on, it's not like that receiving room is overloaded with talent. We could see Xavier Worthy step up, but Rashee Rice is probably dealing with a suspension in the next 12 months. So Eli Stowers ends up getting to go into that team, potentially play behind Travis Kelce for a year, learn how to do his job, and then become the wide receiver one for QB that has shown an affinity towards tight end position. And to go along with that, he comps to Gerald Everett and Pharaoh Brown in our modeling. Like, I absolutely love those comps, not because they're incredible players, but because they're athletic. And when you're dealing with a Travis Kelsey offense, yeah, maybe Jared Wiley or Noah Gray ends up breaking out, but I'm more inclined to pick the guy who absolutely killed it at Vanderbilt, 6'4", 215, moves like wide receiver, and hope that he actually becomes Travis Kelsey over the next season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great landing spot. I mean, anybody that goes to Kansas City, you get excited about. I think that, like you said, we don't even know for sure that Travis Kelsey's even coming back. But even if he does, sitting behind, arguably the greatest of all time at the tight end position for a year is not the end of the world. And yeah, I think there's some potential there. I like Eli Stowers a lot. I think in a lot of ways, to me, he's right there with Sadiq. It's just a matter of, I think that because he doesn't have as much strength as a pass blocker, it's how will the NFL evaluate him? So is he going to end up being a later day 2 pick, whereas Sadiq's going to go in the first round? How will that impact things? Will he be able to stay on the field consistently? I think I see a little bit of kind of a Dalton Kincaid type player. I think that he's a guy that's
like that comp.
He's a good receiving threat, but not as much of a blocker. So it's just a question of will he be able to consistently stay on the field? And Kincaid, even though Kincaid's been solid, I think he's been a little bit disappointing because a lot of people really hoped that he would be, a consistent top 5 tight end. But he sent, between injuries and just kind of splitting playing time, not being a consistent on the field 80% of the time. But if you get Dalton Kincaid level value here at 110, you'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, totally.
All right, I think I'm gonna take the last first round wide receiver here, and that's Casey Concepcion. I think that he's a guy that I like him, but I think that he has kind of the profile of a first round bust, where he's a big play guy, not going to probably be a huge PPR type guy. I see there's a little bit of the Quentin Johnston there, but I think if you end up with first round draft capital and you go to the Shanahan offense in San Francisco, obviously Ayuk's going to be out. They've said, he's going to be somewhere else next year. George Kittle is probably going to miss a chunk of the year with that Achilles injury. Ricky Pearsall, we don't really know. He's looked pretty good when he's been on the field, but he hasn't been on the field much. Like he's struggled with a lot of injuries. Jawan Jennings is solid, but I'm not scared of Jawan Jennings necessarily if you're talking about playing time and target opportunities. So there is a potential target vacuum here in San Francisco. And if they end up taking a first round wide receiver, it's a guy they believe in. There's a bunch of other options there. There's Zachariah Branch was available, Jeremy Bernard was available. Both of the Indiana receivers were available. So if the draft happens like it is, they're choosing Concepcion over those guys, and he's the guy they want and the guy they believe in. And so I think I lean towards that, getting that first round draft capital in a good system with a good quarterback. I think getting him here at the end of the first is actually pretty good value for being a first round wide receiver. And we've already taken a couple guys drafted in the second round.
Yeah, the thing that scares me about Concepcion is when I was doing my eval on him, that guy drops the ball more than you'd like. And he tends to have those like focus moment plays where you're like, you got to catch that one cleanly. And if there is one team that puts people in the doghouse for not doing it their way, it is Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers. So that's my concern. Like I wanted to take KC a little bit earlier here, but I could see him getting Brandon Ayuk into oblivion there in San Francisco, and that's really the concern that I have. The talent's there. He's a big play threat. Anytime the ball's in his hands, it's great. Like between him, Skylar Bell, Emmett Johnson, there are tons of big play guys in this class, and he's definitely one of them. But boy, would I not like to see Shanny actually get in his head, because he could break that man. Yep. Let's take it a little bit lower on this one. I was doing my eval today on Chris Bell. I was really freaking impressed by the ball skills. I thought he looked incredible at Louisville. He comps our model to Brandon Ayuk and Xavier Legette, a little bit of a later breakout, and he just looked great on tape. And I'm going to trust my eval there. I like his landing spot. When we talk about him going to Miami, yeah, like maybe you don't have Tua there. Maybe you have some other quarterback come in and actually have to be thrown in the ball. But Jalen Waddle has allowed for a wide receiver to come in and make plays. So Chris Bell, I could see actually seizing that wide receiver one and deferring Jalen Waddle back into an auxiliary role for that Miami passing offense.
I really like Chris Bell. I was thinking about him with the last pick. I think that he's a guy that would have been definitely a first round pick if he hadn't torn his ACL. So I definitely think there's questions of how soon he's going to be back. But man, if he is anywhere close to, if we're going to see him at all in 2026, I think that he could be a steal getting him here at the end of the first. I think it's a pretty solid landing spot. We don't know if Tyreek Hill's going to be back, but even if he does, I don't expect him to be back with Miami. So it is sort of there's an opening there for targets. Jalen Waddle is a solid receiver, but he's never been like a clear-cut number one. He's had trouble staying on the field. So I definitely think there's a potential for somebody to come in and become an alpha there. And Chris Bell certainly looked like an alpha in college. And so I like him a lot. I think that in a class like we talked about that seems to have a lot of question marks with everyone, sometimes just going off that pure raw talent where you're like, man, this guy is just a beast. I want this guy on my team, even if you don't get him right away. I mean, and you think about picking at the 111 or 112, you're probably a team that won the year before or was in, a top contender. So you don't necessarily need a rookie to come in there and immediately crack your lineup. So you can stash this guy in your taxi or your IR, depending on how he ends up starting the year, and then reap the benefits down the line. So I think that's a great pick there. I'm gonna go Jeremy Bernard here. And he's a guy that I think in some ways similar to Carnell Tate. I mean, very different player from Carnell Tate, but similar in the sense of you had a young wide receiver that kind of overshadowed his solid and consistent play. So everybody was obviously talking about Ryan Williams going into the season at Alabama. But Bernard honestly was their most consistent receiver all year. Really made Ty Simpson's job a lot easier. And part of what I really like about this is the landing spot. He goes to Las Vegas, and obviously this is going with Fernando Mendoza based on this mock. There's not really a clear number one wide receiver. You've got a solid running back in Genty. You've got a solid tight end in Bowers. But there's an opening to be Fernando Mendoza's new number one wide receiver, and I think that it could be Bernard. And I like him here. I like this landing spot for him. And I think he gets pretty good capital, kind of top of the second round. And so, yeah, I think that's a good spot for him.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I was considering Jeremy there too. Like I thought he looked great, especially the way they moved him around the formation. Like they let Ryan Williams play more of that prototypical X receiver, whereas they had Jeremy lining up in the backfield, running arrow routes. Like you love to see that. And Ty Simpson found him all over the place. This is probably the hardest pick I've had in the draft because I want to go off the board. I just want to throw away these landing spots. I know. You know what? Screw it. Yeah, we're doing it. Emmett Johnson. He's going at 2-2. That's the one that I was surprised wasn't in the first two rounds. The guy was absolutely insane at Nebraska. He had some of the most insane plays that I have ever seen from a player. He looks like Devon Achane. When I comp him, he comps to some of those smaller guys, Tajay Spears, the Jaleel McLaughlins of the world. But we've seen those guys be extremely competent in the right offense. I hope Emmett Johnson ends up in one of those teams. Like, I would love to see him in a Bears uniform.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen, third round, this only was a 2-round mock. So, third round running backs can come in and produce right away. I think looking at anybody that ends up getting drafted on day 2, I think is in a good spot. So I definitely think that Johnson has a good chance to be a day 2 running back, whether that's the second or third round. And like you said, if he ends up in a spot like the Bears, I think he could be – he has as good a shot as anyone, I think, to be the RB2 in this class. So I think there's kind of a tier, I think, of him and Price and Coleman and maybe the Penn State running backs that are kind of like – it's like which of these guys is going to emerge as the running back too, and I think he's got as good a shot as anyone. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take Jadarian. Let's see, Jadarian Price. I'm gonna see. I like his draft capital. He kind of went towards the top of the second. Houston's an interesting landing spot. They do have Woody Marks there, but I don't think that Woody Marks is a guy that's going to be a massive workhorse in this league. I doubt that Joe Mixon's going to be returning. He might be. Who knows what's going on with that injury? So I think that, but if they're willing to take him at the top of the second round, this would be 6th pick of the second round that they got from Washington. This means I think that they're pretty excited about this opportunity. They think that he can be a guy that's a workhorse in their offense. And anytime you get a running back that's going not only just day 2, but top of day 2, I think that there's big. I mean, that's kind of the range that we saw Judkins and Travion Henderson go in last year, and those guys were mid first round picks. So I think if this Price actually gets this landing spot, you could see him potentially being in as early as maybe 107, 108. But yeah, I think it's pretty good value here at 203.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that scares me is everyone's writing off Joe Mixon, but we have this happen all the time where there's that freak injury and then the guy comes back. And Joe Mixon was great right before his injury. It could end up being a Joe Mixon, Woody Marks sort of rivalry for touches there with Price coming in late. Because I think Price is plenty talented, like especially in like a 3-down role. Like the big thing that you'd be surprised about is how well he caught the ball. He had a couple crazy one-handers for Notre Dame, and I would love to see him end up in Houston where he could have like a solid team to actually be behind, especially if they get rid of Mixon. Woody Marks is an above average running back in the NFL, and I won't go much higher than that. Like, I think we saw his best season his first year, and I can't imagine we'll see another one like that if he has serious talent like Price actually on his team.
Right. No, I think the funny thing is the Joe Mixon thing. We've honestly seen that happen to Joe Mixon a couple times where it's like people counted him dead in the water from some kind of a weird injury. And he comes back and then looks like a top 10 running back. So yeah, I definitely think that's in the cards. It could happen. But yeah, I agree with Woody. Woody Marks reminds me, his rookie season honestly reminds me a lot of Dameon Pierce's rookie season in the same offense.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have
that's fun comp.
So he had a great rookie season. Everybody was really excited about him, and then he ended up not being really not living up to expectations after that. Ended up in a committee and never really was fantasy relevant again. So I mean we could be surprised, but I'm not buying Woody Marks right now. Let's just say that.
I'm not either, especially at his price tag. But let's move it on to the next one here. You know, we have both those Indiana guys staring at me on the board. Yeah. I want to take one of them, and I've been looking at landing spot. I'm going back and forth because I don't love either of those landing spots. Yeah. Cleveland for Surratt at 239, Cooper for Carolina at 251. When it comes down to eval just on its own, I think I liked what I saw from Cooper at times a little bit more in terms of ceiling, like 6'1", 185. He tends to be the type of receiver like, hey, I mean, I am clearly bought into the new reign of the NFL of bringing these smaller receivers in and turning them into full-time players. So I'm going to go Cooper here. I'm hoping that for Carolina, he can establish a role. It scares me a lot because I love Coker and I love McMillan, but if Bryce Young is actually playoff Bryce, he can support 3. Now, do I think that's actually going to happen with Bryce? I have no freaking clue.
Right. Yeah, I like Cooper a lot. This landing spot scared me a little bit. I just think it's, oh man, another wide receiver in there. I mean, they've taken Leggett, and obviously Coker was a little bit of a surprise. I think he was either undrafted or a day 3 pick. And then obviously using the high pick on McMillan last year. So it's just a crowded room with not a very good quarterback, which those two things together are not a great recipe for success. But sometimes talent wins out. And I do like Omar Cooper a lot. Obviously a huge part of that championship team. The amazing catch against Penn State comes to everyone's mind. But it's tough because it's one of those things where when you get past the top 40 or 50 picks and you start getting into the second and to the third, that tends to be a very hit or miss spot for wide receivers. And it's kind of teams drafting out of luxury and less so need. And so I think that it's, it's tough to predict, but I think at this point in the draft, you're kind of just taking shots on guys you like anyway.
I would hope so. I mean, he's one of those players too, where it's like, hey, you could see Leggett and Coker on different teams within the next
Yeah, you
2
could.
to 3
Yeah.
years. Like those guys aren't locked in. Tedero McMillan's the only guy that you know is going to be there over the next 4 seasons. But I see you took the other guy
Yeah.
in the Indiana uniform already. Tell us about Elijah.
Yeah, so I like Elijah Surratt. I actually have him slightly above Cooper. He kind of has a build that reminds me of Mike Evans and Drake London. Kind of a big jump ball target, can go up and get the ball. He isn't the most. I'm not sure he's going to be the most polished route runner. I'm not sure he got the best speed necessarily, but I think he's a guy that I actually like the Cleveland landing spot. The thing I don't like is that he's the second wide receiver Cleveland takes in this draft. So, if in a vacuum, let's say they took a defensive player or an offensive lineman in the first round and then took Surratt in the second, I'd like it a lot more. But, I think he can still do fine here. And again, taking shots on guys I like in the middle of the second, who knows? Maybe he outplays Boston in training camp and ends up getting more of an immediate role.
Yeah, totally possible. I mean, he's a really talented receiver, kind of similar to Jeremy in terms of like playing out of position a lot. He ran some of those arrow routes. They moved him around formation. So I do like that spot. I too was scared away by seeing Boston above him on that draft board.
Mhm.
A lot of luxury picks in this athletic draft.
Right.
Don't know what they're calling there, but we'll see if it works out. I'm going to go a little bit lower on this one. Sticking with the wide receiver position, a guy we actually saw in Mobile, Alabama, Jacoby Lane. He absolutely killed it in that number 2 role for USC. He was frequently getting open. And the big thing I saw in Mobile, which was what I wanted to see, and like a lot of people, their eval of Jacoby Lane after Mobile was a lot lower than mine, which surprised me a bit. But the footwork that I saw from him was what really stood out to me, because when it comes down to it, he isn't big enough to be a bona fide Z receiver on an NFL roster. Like, he's 180 and 6'4". The guy's a twig, but
Mhm.
he is so crisp in his route running. He didn't show a ton of physicality in Mobile, but what he did show was a lot more polish than the other big guys. Like Malachi Fields, Ted Hurst out there were running their routes, and they looked a little bit shaky at times. Whereas when you saw Jacoby Lane come out there, and given he's in USC's program, he has a lot more opportunity to get these reps with quality coaching staffs. He looked as crisp as you can hope, and he still managed to get a couple of those like big plays in the end zone over DBs. He's going to Pittsburgh, where DK Metcalf's the only other name in town, and if Pittsburgh can actually bring in a competent QB, screw it, he could carve out a role for himself pretty easily there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good landing spot for him. I was looking when I looked at this mock, I was like, all right, who went to Pittsburgh? Because I do think that a Pittsburgh definitely has a vacuum at that wide receiver 2 position. Now, we don't know exactly what they're going to do at quarterback, but I do think that they're going to be, Mike McCarthy's there. He's, a lot of the Pittsburgh fans were kind of bored by the hire, like, it's a boring hire, but he's a solid, consistent NFL head coach. I mean, as a Cowboys fan, I saw him, with us, and a lot of people complained about him, myself included in some ways, but he's just very solid and consistent. His offenses were good. His in-game coaching decisions can be head-scratching at times, but I think that he puts, a good offensive product on the field, and I think that he'll be looking for a solid wide receiver too. And this is a pretty good landing spot for Lane. He's a guy I thought might come back, but he, and get a chance to shine outside of Lemon. But I think again, it's a shallower class, so it kind of makes sense to especially if it gets to that day 2 capital.
Well, Mike McCarthy has done a great job of supporting 2 wide receivers in almost every spot he's been at.
Cool.
Cowboys, Mari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Packers, Jordan Nelson, Devontae Adams. There are 100 examples of him being able to manage that.
That's true. That's very true.
And you sniped me good here.
Yeah, I actually think if Jonah Coleman goes in the second round, this is a guy that, again, it could be going at right around the 1-2 turn, and to get him 207 here, I think that's good value. I like a lot of what I saw from him. I think he has a good chance to be the wide receiver or the running back 2 in the class. we kind of tweaked it. Obviously, they had Houston taking a second running back. I don't think that'll happen, so we had him having Washington trading up to get him. And I think if he goes to Washington, there's a lot of potential there. I think that we didn't see. There's a lot of hype around Krosky Merritt, but didn't really produce anything that makes you think that he's going to be a long-term answer. Chris Rodriguez had a couple flashes, but again, I think he's a career backup running back in the NFL. Austin Eckler could be coming back, but again, he's a complimentary piece, especially at his age. So there's a potential that Washington could draft a guy that becomes their bell cow back. And if they use a day 2 pick, or even in this hypothetical trading up into the second round to get him, I would say that is prime position and a good sign that they want this guy to be a bell cow back. And we saw that he could shoulder a massive workload in college. So I think I would expect that if he does get day 2 capital to a running back needy team, that we could see him producing right away as a rookie.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And I love that landing spot for him next to Jaden Daniels. Like, he's going to have opportunity to get the ball. They already ran a 2-back system. So even if Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt continues to have some success, he's going to be capped by Jonah Coleman there. Like,
Yeah.
Jonah Coleman will get his opportunities early. I can't imagine they're going to keep rolling out Chris Rodriguez. We'll see. I was surprised last year. I might be surprised again, but Jonah Coleman's the most talented guy in that room by far.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've stalled long enough. Let me decide who I actually want to go with here. Skylar Bell being actually all the way up the board on sleeper is killing me, because I thought I'd be ahead on being a sleeper pick there, but I don't have him this high even in my rankings. Zachariah Branch, didn't love my eval for him, and Baltimore's landing spot scares me even more because you never know what they're going to do with their wide receiver room. We've seen Rashad Bateman be vanquished there. I'm going to go with Katron Allen. I want to go Singleton because I actually really liked what I saw from Singleton in terms of his pass catching out in Mobile, but that foot injury is huge. Like, if you miss a large portion of the scouting process, that is going to absolutely kill you. And Katron Allen looked great in between the tackles. The second the ball touched his hands on a passing route, he did not look great. And that's okay. That's okay. He doesn't have to do that, because he ends up, say, in a Cowboys uniform. You guys need a between the tackles grinder. And I like to believe that he's going to end up in a spot where he can go into that between the 20s role and really show that he's an explosive running back. For probably 2/3 of the days we were there, he had the highest recorded running back speed, which tied for Nick Singleton. And that's pretty neat because he's a huge running back.
Yeah. I think I think the foot injury is going to hurt Singleton a lot. And I think it would not surprise me if Allen ends up being the higher drafted Penn State running back at this point. Man, it's sad, the fall off, because people were talking about Singleton, if he had come out last year, being potentially the RB2 in that class. So, if he ends up in what's a weaker running back class, more in RB6, 7, 8 range, that'd be super unfortunate, but I think it could happen. I'm tempted to take him here, but I think I will take, just because of the draft capital, I think I will take Zachariah Branch. There's just, I see just a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to be this player, but I see a little bit of Tyreek Hill in his game. He was obviously a massive, massive recruit coming out of high school. Went to USC, showed massive flashes as a freshman, then kind of just faded off a little bit into obscurity, but then had a pretty good, solid last year at Georgia. And I've seen some mocks with him going in the first round, and if that happens, I feel much more comfortable taking him here. This landing spot, late second to Baltimore, is not ideal, but I think there's a little bit of room for some play there. Obviously, Baltimore as a team did not have a very good season. Lamar Jackson was hurt most of the year. He's a guy that I think he can coexist with Zay Flowers. I think they play different styles, so I don't think that necessarily is an issue. And really, Rashad Bateman's been inconsistent. It's not like there's a solid receiving core that you can't penetrate into with this, with this landing spot.
Phrasing.
So I think that he could definitely, be a guy that gets some play there. I don't love the landing spot, but again, we're here into the second, so I'll take anybody drafted in the second round. and just hope that something good happens.
Yeah, this next one, you know what? I was at the Senior Bowl, so I have to take the best player at the Senior Bowl, or at least the person that everyone lined up to interview every single practice. Tyron Montgomery, no, Ted Hurst. Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. The guy looked like a freaking monster out there. Everyone's seen the one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. I'll be honest, before that, he looked rusty. And then right after that catch, I think something clicked in his head where he realized he can play with all of these guys. And from that point forward, he was easily the most impressive receiver out there. So if we see him continue that progression, he has every physical trait you would want in wide receiver one. If he ends up in the right landing spot, I will be thoroughly happy.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot too. But he kind of reminds me the way he's being hyped up in this process post Senior Bowl, a little bit of Jalen Royals, and I hope that
a lot like Jalen Royals.
I hope that it doesn't end up the same way where he gets so hyped up. People are almost taking him in the first round, and then he ends up getting buried on the depth chart somewhere. So hopefully he gets good draft capital. Hopefully he gets into a good spot.
He comps to a Cowboys guy, actually. Our modeling has him comping to Michael Gallup, which I absolutely love, because I think he plays exactly like that. One of those jump ball guys that isn't the crispest route runner, but can get open.
Yeah, Gallup is a massive what if. I mean, the height of his talent was unreal. I thought he was going to be an absolute stud. Just too many injuries derailed his career. But yeah, I mean, if he ends up at that level and can have better injury luck, that's definitely a good comp. So I like that pick there. I'm going to take. I think that he's a bit of a wild card depending on landing spot, and he's not going to go in the second round based on this. But I like Chris Brazzell a lot from Tennessee.
Love that.
I think he's got a lot of potential. We've seen some flame outs from Tennessee wide receivers recently. I think that both Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt were, guys that people had high expectations for and then didn't really pan out the way we had hoped. We saw some flashes from Tillman. So it's not like the Josh Heupel offense necessarily translates immediately to the NFL, but I think he's the best one that's come out of there. And I think that, it really depends on where his landing spot is, who's going to use him. I really hope he ends up going in the second round, but obviously we're going off these landing spots, so he'll be at least a third. But I think he's got all the talent in the world, and so I'd take a shot at him in the late second.
Yeah, he comped well to Jacoby Myers in our initial testing, which I'll be honest, would love to see that from him. I think he could end up pulling off a role like that. We'll see. The Tennessee guys have been a little inconsistent. There are two names on the board here at 12 that I want to end with. One of them's obviously Skylar Bell, but I feel like he's gotten steamed up enough that I kind of want to go a little bit deeper on this one. Mike Washington out of Arkansas was probably the most impressive running back, had the highest speed score of the entire Senior Bowl at 20 miles an hour. He's 220, 6'2 and a half, and looks it. Got a nice interview with him. Accidentally dropped my mic down his shirt, which was super fun. You know how everything that could go wrong will go wrong. Right. But nicest guy in the world. And he looked really physical between the 20s, which is great. But to be honest, most running backs do, and you can't evaluate running at the Senior Bowl. They're playing 50% speed at best, sometimes 60 on a good day. But you know what he did do great? Route running. He had guys flying into the dust left and right, which is really surprising to see for a guy who only had 28 catches last year. Like, that's great for a running back, especially in the Arkansas system that isn't necessarily using him in that way. But when it shows up on a practice field with NFL caliber defenders, because the one thing I will say about this Senior Bowl, boy, was the defense more impressive than the offense. That actually shows me a lot about his talent. And I think he could be a 3-down back in the right system. Like, say Washington goes with him instead of Coleman in a real draft, I would be pretty happy.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, he's a guy I haven't really looked into a lot yet, so I'm curious to kind of dig into him more. But
it's fun.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if you'll see mini mocks with him going over over Singleton, but I do think that could start to happen with that foot injury is just such a huge question mark. So
I have no clue what to do with Singleton right
yeah,
now. Trust me, about 7 spots prior, I was like, man, I would have taken Singleton here.
yeah, it's tough. All right, well, that completes 2 rounds. Any thoughts, takeaways from doing the mock?
1 running back in the first round.
Yeah,
That's my main takeaway. Like we said this a weaker wide receiver class. I don't really see it that way. I think it's just a really flat wide receiver class.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're going to take a guy in the first round, and 3 people in your league who take that first round wide receiver are going to be real disappointed at the end of year 1.
Mhm.
So we're going to see which of them actually breaks out. I'm not sure we have a read on it yet.
Yeah, I'm not really sure there's much of a difference between a guy like Concepcion versus like Hurst or Brazel. I think either one of, they were kind of all in the same tier and they went like a round apart. So, a lot of it comes down to landing spots. If Concepcion becomes a first round pick, that's
That changes things.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that there's a lot of maybe, 6, 7, somewhere in there, somewhere in that range. 106, 107 is there'll be some solid players, and then after that, it's really wide open. It's not like there's not talented guys, but it's just a very flat tier, like you said. So I think trading back, I mean, I think at this point everybody kind of knows that, but still, if you can trade back from 108, 109 and maybe get 112 and 205, something like that, where you're trading back and getting 2 guys in that range rather than 1, I think there's something to be said possibly for doing that. But yeah, obviously a lot of us will
third
shake out.
round.
What'd you say?
I like the 3rd round. Malachi Field, Skylar Bell, Nick Singleton, Carson Beck. There are guys to take in the 3rd round this year.
Well, yeah, I actually think that Carson Beck's an interesting one because I do think that if he ends up going 2nd round somewhere, that's a guy that you have to consider. And yeah, really at the 1-2 turn. I mean, if he ends up getting in a spot where somebody wants him to start, he has a ton of experience. He could jump in there right away. He could be this year's Tyler Shuck. And so that's a guy to watch. I guess Nussmeier is another one. He was mocked at the beginning of the year as a potential 101, and obviously had a very rough season. But if somebody gives him a shot on day 2, and you think he'll have a chance to start, maybe he'll get in the right system. So there's definitely some quarterbacks to watch, depending on where they land, because it's just a little bit of a shallow class. There's not a lot of guys. Cade Klubnik, I guess, is another one. Diego Pavia, even though what did he measure in at 5'9 3/4?
5'9".
Yeah,
he was 5'9" and all 5'9" of it. But see, Nuss is one of those ones that the Senior Bowl just ruined my opinion of him, because I wanted to like Nuss, and he clearly did not want to throw a pass more than 10 yards down the field in practice. He was he clearly cared about that draft capital. Respect it. That's probably the right move. His agents are probably in his ear too, but boy, is it rough watching a full set of 3 days of practice and not seeing the guy with arguably the best arm out there throw a pass more than 5 yards down the field.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think there's so much. I don't know. Maybe it's not this way, but it feels like more than in years past. There's guys that could go into the 1st round that could also go in the 4th round. It's really hard to know where this is going to all shake out. And obviously, the picture will become clearer as we get closer. But I just think there's so much range of outcomes of where these guys get drafted that so much can change between now and when we're actually having rookie drafts.
Yeah, I'm real excited for underdog ADP on some of these rookies. I feel like there are going to be some values.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Addi. I appreciate you having you on, and really enjoyed drafting with you. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. And we'll have this up here shortly. And yeah, you're always active in our Discord as well. We've seen you a bunch of different places, but where can the people find you, your socials, etc.?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. You got a great podcast voice, by the way. I always respect it. I wouldn't have assumed it, but like it's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Even better through a live mic. But you can find me at Duck League Champ on all the major socials, League.Champ on TikTok, and obviously on the Google Play and the App Store, League Champ, we're giving away stuff all throughout the offseason. We have a draft competition for fantasy players and the first round. So we're going to be doing some fun stuff there and have some new features coming out. We actually got into the prospect space. I don't know if I messaged you about that, Austin, but we have prospect comps. We have their high school star rating, their pre-draft rankings. So like, we're really trying to get into that Devy space to make our tool more accessible for people in the Dynasty and Devy space. So hyped to be out here on Dynasty Gambit. Love your guys' show. And I hope that even though I have my hat on, I still have better hair than Benny.
Yeah, it's a low bar. It's a low bar. That's what I have. I'm almost bald myself. And so it's like I wanted Benny as the co-host so that I could have the better hair on the show.
Do a little clown in there.
No. Thanks for being on, and appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.